The CEO set everything up to humiliate the woman he once loved. But when she arrived holding the hands of twin children, he was hit with a double dose of truth that left him frozen in place. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Rebecca Anderson tilted her head back, gazing upward until her neck ached. The Manhattan skyline seemed to stretch infinitely into the crisp autumn sky, a forest of glass and steel that both intimidated and exhilarated her. She clutched her portfolio tighter against her chest, feeling the hard edge of her information technology diploma press against her ribs. "Excuse me?" a businessman muttered, brushing past her on the crowded sidewalk. Rebecca blinked and straightened her posture. This wasn't Kansas anymore, and sidewalk stargazing clearly marked her as an outsider. 24 years old, with a freshly minted degree and savings that would evaporate in months, she couldn't afford to look like a tourist. "Reynolds Enterprises," she whispered to herself, checking the address on her phone one last time before entering the gleaming skyscraper. The elevator ascended 47 floors in near silence, carrying Rebecca toward her interview. She smoothed down her navy blue skirt, the nicest one she owned, purchased specifically for this moment, and practiced her breathing exercises. The doors opened onto a reception area where everything gleamed: marble floors, glass walls, people's smiles. "Rebecca Anderson for the 10 o'clock administrative assistant interview," she told the receptionist, working to keep her voice steady. 20 minutes later, she sat across from Diane Winters, the head of human resources, whose diamond bracelet probably cost more than Rebecca's entire education. "Your technical qualifications are impressive," Diane said, reviewing Rebecca's resume with a perfectly manicured finger. "But I must ask, why Manhattan? Your entire life has been in Kansas." Rebecca sat straighter. "Because the best opportunities in technology and finance are here. I didn't earn my degree to aim for mediocrity." Something in her tone must have registered because Diane's expression shifted from polite disinterest to mild curiosity. "One final question. How well do you handle pressure, Miss Anderson?" Rebecca smiled. "Pressure is just opportunity in disguise." 2 weeks later, Rebecca began her position as an administrative assistant at Reynolds Enterprises, one of Manhattan's largest real estate development firms. Her tiny studio apartment in Queens consumed nearly half her salary, but she fell asleep each night watching the distant Manhattan skyline from her window, certain she was exactly where she needed to be. The first time Rebecca encountered Marshall Reynolds, he didn't even look at her. She was carrying a stack of reports to the conference room when he strode past, barking orders into his phone. The second time, he nearly collided with her in the elevator, mumbling a distracted apology without making eye contact. The third time, however, everything changed. Rebecca was working late, trying to restore the network after a server crash. Most employees had gone home, leaving the 48th floor eerily quiet. She was hunched over the server room terminal when a voice behind her made her jump. "Any idea when the network will be back up? I have a proposal that needs to go out tonight." She turned to find Marshall Reynolds leaning against the doorframe, 32 years old, heir to the Reynolds empire, and notoriously impatient. In person, his presence was even more commanding than his reputation suggested. Dark hair, sharp jawline, custom suit that probably cost more than her annual rent. 10 minutes, Rebecca replied, returning to her keyboard. "The backup is almost restored." Instead of leaving, he stepped closer. "You're not from IT." "No, I'm administrative support for the development division, but I have a degree in information technology." "Yet you're working as an assistant?" His tone wasn't condescending, just curious. "For now," she answered, entering the final command sequence. The servers hummed back to life. "Network restored. Your proposal can go out." Marshall studied her with newfound interest. "What's your name?" "Rebecca Anderson." "Well, Rebecca Anderson, I'd say you're overqualified for your position." He checked his watch, a Rolex that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Have you eaten?" I was about to order dinner while I finished this proposal. That night they shared Thai food in his corner office with its panoramic view of Manhattan. He asked about her background, her education, her ambitions. She spoke with passion about technological innovation and financial systems security. For the first time since arriving in New York, Rebecca felt seen. "We should continue this conversation," Marshall said as she prepared to leave. "Perhaps over dinner tomorrow? To discuss a special project I might need help with." Rebecca knew she should be cautious. He was the boss's son, the heir apparent. Office relationships were complicated at best, disastrous at worst. But the intensity in his gaze made her pulse quicken. "What kind of project?" she asked. His smile was confident, practiced. "Let's discuss it over dinner." Their dinner conversation never touched on any work project. Instead, they discovered shared interests in architecture, technology, and 19th century literature. 3 hours passed like minutes. When he hailed a taxi afterward, he hesitated before closing the door. "I'd like to see you again, Rebecca, not for work, just to see where this goes." 2 weeks later, they stood on his balcony overlooking Central Park, the autumn leaves creating a tapestry of red and gold below them. Manhattan sparkled around them, and when Marshall kissed her, Rebecca felt as though she had finally arrived somewhere significant. "This needs to stay between us," he said afterward, his hand still cradling her face. "My father is incredibly traditional about the company, and I'm about to be promoted to vice president. Office relationships would complicate things." Rebecca understood. She was a nobody from Kansas. He was Manhattan royalty. Their worlds couldn't have been further apart, but when he looked at her like that, those worlds seemed to dissolve. "I understand," she said. "Discretion is important." Their relationship evolved in stolen moments, late nights in his office after everyone had gone home, weekends in a small apartment he kept in Queens that became their hideaway, as Marshall called it. For 6 months, Rebecca lived in a dizzying parallel reality, administrative assistant by day, companion to one of Manhattan's most eligible bachelors by night. "Why me?" she asked him once, as they lay tangled in sheets in the Queen's apartment. "You could date anyone in Manhattan." Marshall traced her collarbone with his finger. "Because you're real. Those socialites my father wants me to marry. They're like mannequins, beautiful, vacant, interchangeable. You have substance, Rebecca. Intelligence. Fire." She wanted to believe him, and for 6 blissful months, she did. December arrived with the coldest winter in decades. Manhattan transformed into a postcard wonderland of snow-covered skyscrapers and holiday lights. Rebecca felt a different kind of transformation happening within her, subtle changes she tried to ignore until she couldn't anymore. 3 missed periods, morning nausea, tenderness that made even her loosest blouses uncomfortable. The pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter of the Queen's apartment for a full day before she found the courage to use it. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately, confirming what her body had been telling her for weeks. That Friday evening, Rebecca prepared Marshall's favorite meal, set the table with care, and waited with trembling hands. When he arrived, his preoccupation was immediately apparent. "I can only stay for dinner," he said, removing his cashmere coat. "The partners are announcing the vice presidency on Monday, and I need to review the transition materials." "That's wonderful news," Rebecca said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We should celebrate." Dinner passed with Marshall discussing his plans for the development division once he took over as VP. Rebecca listened, picking at her food, waiting for the right moment. It never seemed to arrive, so she finally created one. "Marshall, there's something I need to tell you." He paused, wine glass halfway to his lips. "What is it?" Rebecca took a deep breath and placed the pregnancy test on the table between them. "I'm pregnant." Marshall stared at the test, unmoving. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "A child?" He finally let out a disbelieving laugh, checking his Rolex. That's simply impossible right now, Rebecca. I'm about to assume the vice presidency. My father is finally giving me real responsibilities. But we could make it work, Rebecca argued, feeling the floor disappearing beneath her. I know it's not ideal timing, but… Ideal timing? Marshall interrupted, his voice as sharp as the winter wind outside. There is no ideal timing for this. A child would be an unbearable burden for my career, and frankly, you'll never be enough for the world where I need to shine. His words hit her like physical blows. Rebecca sat frozen as Marshall stood and began methodically gathering his belongings from around the apartment. You should go back to your insignificant Kansas, Rebecca, he continued, his voice clinical and detached. It was a mistake to think this could be more than a temporary diversion. You never belonged in Manhattan, and you'll never belong in my world. Rebecca watched in silence as he emptied drawers, erasing any trace of his presence. She couldn't even cry, such was her disbelief. What will you do? He asked with clinical indifference. I don't know, Rebecca answered, the reality still not fully processed. Well, whatever your decision, be certain that I want no part of it. My lawyers will contact you on Monday with a confidentiality agreement. It will be generous, provided you keep this quiet. When the door closed behind him, Rebecca finally collapsed. Hours later, walking aimlessly through snow-covered Central Park, she sat on a frozen bench, the lights of Manhattan's skyscrapers gleaming mercilessly above her. It was then that the first strong cramp made her double over in pain. In the emergency room at New York Presbyterian Hospital, she received news that would transform her life. She wasn't expecting one baby, but two. Without adequate health insurance after losing her job, Marshall ensured she was fired the following Monday. Rebecca faced the harsh reality of her situation. The generous agreement offered by Marshall's lawyers was humiliating, a sum that would barely cover 6 months' rent in exchange for her permanent silence and waiver of any paternity claims. In the months that followed, Rebecca worked 3 different jobs: cafe attendant in the mornings, data entry in the afternoons, and remote technical support at night. She slept only 4 hours a day, her exhausted body struggling to sustain the twins growing inside her. When Emma and Ethan were born on a hot July day, Rebecca had already moved to a tiny apartment in the Bronx, sharing space with another single mother. Medical bills had consumed all her savings, and she frequently chose between eating or paying rent. It was during a particularly difficult early morning with the 3-month-old twins crying from colic while she tried to remotely fix a computer to maintain her night job that Rebecca had her epiphany. Looking at her children, she saw not just overwhelming responsibilities, but the reason for an unbreakable determination. "You are not a burden," she whispered to the babies who had finally fallen asleep. "You are my strength. And one day, everyone will see what Marshall Reynolds discarded. I promise you, he will swallow every cruel word he said about us." That same night, Rebecca drafted a detailed 5-year plan combining work, study, and creating a technology startup. It wouldn't just be survival. It would be a rise that Manhattan would never forget. While the doctors at New York Presbyterian revealed she was expecting twins, Rebecca couldn't possibly imagine that 15 years later, she would be commanding a billion-dollar technology empire from those same skyscrapers that now seemed so hostile and unreachable. The cold sterility of the hospital emergency room seemed to mock Rebecca's predicament. She sat on the examination table, still wearing her snow-dampened clothes, as the doctor pointed to the ultrasound screen. "Do you see that? And that?" The doctor circled 2 distinct shapes with her finger. "You're carrying twins, Ms. Anderson." The word hung in the air like a suspended weight. Twins. Not one life depending on her, but 2. "Are you sure?" Rebecca's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Completely. I'd estimate you're about 12 weeks along." The doctor's expression softened. "Is there someone I can call for you?" Rebecca shook her head, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Marshall's words from hours earlier echoed in her mind. A child would be an unbearable burden. What would he say about 2? Monday morning arrived with brutal efficiency. Rebecca had spent the weekend in a fog, sleeping on her tear-soaked pillow when exhaustion finally overcame her. She dressed carefully for work, applying extra concealer to hide her swollen eyes. Perhaps Marshall had spoken in shock, she reasoned. Perhaps he'd reconsidered. The security guard at Reynolds Enterprises stopped her at the lobby entrance. "I'm sorry, Ms. Anderson. Your access has been revoked." "There must be a mistake," Rebecca protested, clutching her bag. "I work on the 48th floor." "Not anymore, ma'am. I have instructions to collect your ID badge." As she surrendered her badge, Rebecca spotted Diane Winters from HR approaching with a manila envelope. "Rebecca," Diane said, her professional smile firmly in place. "Let's talk in the coffee shop across the street. This doesn't need to be uncomfortable." 15 minutes later, Rebecca stared at the termination papers before her. "Performance issues? I've received excellent reviews for 6 months." "Company restructuring," Diane offered smoothly. "Your position has been eliminated." "By Marshall Reynolds?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely audible. Diane's hesitation was answer enough. "You'll receive 2 weeks' severance, and—" She slid another envelope across the table. "The legal department asked me to deliver this as well." Inside was a confidentiality agreement drafted by the Reynolds legal team, $5,000 in exchange for her permanent silence and waiver of any paternity claims, $5,000 for the erasure of her dignity, her relationship, and her children's right to know their father. "Mr. Reynolds feels this is generous," Diane added when Rebecca remained silent. Rebecca looked up, meeting Diane's eyes. "Does he?" Walking home in the bitter January cold, Rebecca calculated the brutal arithmetic of her situation. Her savings would cover 2 months of rent. Without health insurance, prenatal care for twins would consume every penny she had. $5,000 wouldn't even cover the medical bills for delivery. That night, she sat at her tiny kitchen table, researching pregnancy, twins, prenatal care costs, and New York's support systems for single mothers. The numbers were merciless. By dawn, she had made dozens of calls, sent countless emails, and compiled a spreadsheet of potential jobs that might hire a pregnant woman. 3 days later, she secured her first new position, morning shift at a cafe 8 blocks from her apartment. The manager, a middle-aged woman named Rita, hired her on the spot. "I can't pay much," Rita warned, "and I'll need you here by 5:30 every morning." "I'll be here at 5:15, Rebecca promised. By the end of the week, she had added an afternoon data entry position at a shipping company and evening remote technical support work for a budget computer repair service. 3 jobs, barely adding up to what she'd earned at Reynolds Enterprises. The routine was punishing. Rebecca woke at 4:30 each morning, worked the cafe until 11, grabbed lunch while walking to the data entry job from noon until 5, then returned home for a quick dinner before logging in for technical support from 6 until midnight. Sleep came in precious 4-hour blocks, never enough to dispel the bone-deep fatigue that had become her constant companion. "You're killing yourself," Rita observed one morning, watching Rebecca suppress a yawn while wiping down tables. "How far along are you now?" 16 weeks, Rebecca answered, resting her hand on her slightly rounded belly. "And the father?" Rebecca's silence was answer enough. "My sister runs a women's shelter in the Bronx," Rita said after a moment. "They might know about better housing options than that overpriced shoebox you're in." 2 weeks later, Rebecca's growing belly made the uniform at the data entry job impossible to button. Her supervisor, a perpetually irritated man named Gerald, called her into his cramped office. "Anderson, we have a dress code here." "I know, sir. I'm pregnant. And the uniform—" "Not my problem," Gerald interrupted. "Either fit the uniform or find another job." That night, Rebecca fell asleep at her computer during a remote support call. The customer complained, and by morning, she had lost that job too. Down to just the cafe, Her carefully constructed financial plan collapsed like a house of cards. The February snowstorm that followed seemed like nature's cruel metaphor for her circumstances. Rebecca trudged through knee-deep snow to reach the cafe, only to find it closed due to weather. No work meant no pay. Standing in the howling wind, she felt the first flutter of movement from within, the twins making their presence known. "I feel you," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I'm not giving up." Rita's sister, Carmen, helped Rebecca find a tiny room in a shared apartment in the Bronx. Her new roommate, Lucia, was also a single mother with a 2-year-old daughter. "It's not much," Lucia said, showing Rebecca the converted dining room that would be hers. "But we can split childcare when the time comes." Moving day consisted of Rebecca carrying 2 suitcases up 5 flights of stairs, pausing every few steps as her pregnant body protested. The contrast between this dingy walk-up and Marshall's luxurious Central Park apartment was so stark, it would have been comical if it weren't so painful. By April, Rebecca had secured 2 new jobs: morning data entry at a medical billing office that didn't care about her pregnancy as long as she met quotas, and evening phone surveys for a market research company. Each night, she also spent 2 hours applying for IT positions, only to be rejected when her pregnancy became apparent in interviews. The prenatal clinic in the Bronx confirmed the twins were developing normally, but the doctor's frown when reviewing her vitals told another story. "Your blood pressure is concerning, Ms. Anderson. You need more rest." Rebecca nodded, knowing rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. Each medical appointment added to the mounting pile of bills on her kitchen table. The $5,000 from Marshall remained untouched in an envelope, a testament to her refusal to be bought off. One night in May, while sorting through bills, Rebecca fainted. Lucia found her on the kitchen floor and helped her to bed. "You can't keep this up," Lucia insisted. "These babies need you healthy." "What choice do I have?" Rebecca asked, her voice breaking. "The money's almost gone." Lucia sat beside her. "My cousin works for social services. Let me call her." With Lucia's help, Rebecca secured emergency Medicaid coverage for her pregnancy and connected with a nonprofit program for expectant mothers. It wasn't enough, but it was something, a small safety net appearing just as she was about to hit rock bottom. June brought sweltering heat that made the Bronx apartment nearly uninhabitable. At 32 weeks pregnant, Rebecca's body had become a monument to discomfort. Her ankles swelled to twice their normal size, and the stairs to the apartment became a daily mountain to climb. The medical billing office let her go when she needed more bathroom breaks than their strict schedule allowed. The market research company reduced her hours when callers complained about her breathlessness. Once again, Rebecca found herself piecing together odd jobs: data entry from home, basic website maintenance for local businesses, anything she could do while managing her increasingly difficult pregnancy. One night, as she sat at her laptop trying to fix a remote client's email configuration, both twins began kicking vigorously. The movement was so strong it shifted her computer. "Easy in there," she murmured. "Mommy's trying to work." The word "mommy" caught in her throat. Soon these movements would be 2 actual babies. Her responsibility, her children, her family. The enormity of it settled over her like a weighted blanket. On July 15th, in the midst of a record-breaking heat wave, Rebecca's water broke. Lucia called an ambulance when the contractions came too quickly for a subway journey to the hospital. "You're not doing this alone," Lucia insisted, holding Rebecca's hand as the paramedics helped her onto a stretcher. The delivery room was a blur of pain, clinical voices, and harsh lights. After 14 hours of labor, Emma arrived first, announcing herself with a robust cry that belied her 5-pound frame. Ethan followed 17 minutes later, quieter but equally determined. When the nurse placed the swaddled twins in her arms, Rebecca felt a surge of emotion so powerful it momentarily erased all the hardship of the past months. They were perfect: tiny fingers, button noses, and wisps of dark hair that undeniably reminded her of Marshall. "Hello, my loves," she whispered. "It's just us now, but we're going to be okay." The hospital bills arrived before Rebecca was even discharged. The total made her dizzy, more money than she could hope to earn in 6 months. The social worker assigned to her case helped arrange a payment plan, but it was still overwhelming. Back in the Bronx apartment, reality set in with brutal clarity. 2 babies meant twice the diapers, twice the formula. Her milk hadn't come in properly due to stress. Twice everything. Rebecca's remaining savings vanished within weeks. She created a makeshift office in the corner of her room with the twins sleeping in second-hand bassinets beside her desk. During their brief naps, she frantically worked on freelance programming projects, earning just enough to keep them afloat. 3 months passed in a haze of sleepless nights and desperate days. The twins developed colic, often crying for hours despite Rebecca's best efforts to soothe them. One particularly difficult night, as she bounced a screaming Ethan while Emma wailed in her bassinet, her laptop pinged with an urgent client message. "Server down. Need immediate assistance." Rebecca placed Ethan beside his sister, wiped her tears and turned to the computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, executing commands to diagnose the remote server issue. Behind her, both babies continued to cry, their tiny faces red with distress. After 40 minutes of concentrated work, she resolved the server problem. The client's grateful message came with a bonus payment, enough for another week of formula. When she turned back to the bassinets, she found both twins had finally cried themselves to sleep. In the sudden silence, Rebecca sank to the floor, her back against the wall, and surveyed the scene: the cramped room with peeling paint, the makeshift office cobbled together from yard sale finds, the bassinets containing the 2 most precious beings in her world. "You are not a burden," she whispered to her sleeping babies, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You are my strength. And one day, everyone will see what Marshall Reynolds discarded. I promise you, he will swallow every cruel word he said about us." With renewed determination, Rebecca pulled out a legal pad and began to write. Hour by hour, she crafted a detailed 5-year plan: work milestones, education goals, business development strategies, and financial projections. By dawn, she had created not just a survival plan, but a roadmap to triumph. That same night, Rebecca drafted a detailed 5-year plan combining work, study, and creating a technology startup. It wouldn't just be survival. It would be a rise that Manhattan would never forget. Rebecca's detailed 5-year plan remained clutched in her hand as dawn broke over the Bronx. The twins had finally settled into a peaceful sleep, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect synchronicity. She pinned the papers to the wall above her makeshift desk, a visual reminder of the path forward amid the chaos of new motherhood. July melted into the sweltering heat of August. The hospital bills continued to arrive with alarming regularity, each one thicker than the last. Rebecca created a system, sorting them into 2 piles, those that required immediate attention and those that could wait until her next freelance payment cleared. "They're getting bigger every day," Lucia observed one evening, gently rocking Emma while Rebecca fed Ethan. "Doesn't help with the heat, though." Rebecca nodded, wiping a bead of sweat from her forehead. The apartment's ancient window unit struggled against the relentless summer heat, more often than not surrendering to the humidity that left everyone's clothes perpetually damp. "The pediatrician says they're both right on track for weight gain," Rebecca replied, shifting Ethan to her shoulder for burping. "Though I think Emma's already trying to outpace her brother." "Strong girl," Lucia smiled, "just like her mama." The words warmed Rebecca more than any compliment she'd received in her professional life. Strong. She needed to be, for both of them. When the twins reached 6 weeks, Rebecca expanded her freelance programming work. She set up a system of alarms, 20-minute increments when both babies typically slept, to maximize productivity. Each precious pocket of time became a sprint of coding, emails, and client communication. "You're like a machine," Lucia marveled after watching Rebecca complete an entire website debugging session during the twins' 40-minute nap. I could barely remember my own name when Sophia was that age. Rebecca managed a tired smile. Not a machine, just desperate. On a particularly humid September morning, as Rebecca navigated the twins' double stroller through the narrow apartment hallway, the downstairs neighbor held the building door open for her. "Twins, huh?" The older woman peered into the stroller. "You doing this alone?" Rebecca nodded, bracing for the usual pity or judgment. Instead, the woman, Mrs. Guzman, as she introduced herself, nodded approvingly. "My sister had twins. Hardest job there is. Listen, I teach at the community center on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They have free childcare for 2 hours. You could use a break." That small act of kindness became a lifeline. Twice weekly, Rebecca entrusted the twins to the center's experienced caregivers while she used the computer lab to work uninterrupted. Those precious hours doubled her productivity and income, allowing her to start making minimum payments on the hospital bills. As autumn descended on New York, Rebecca established a punishing but effective routine. Mornings began at 5, with feedings and client emails. By 9, she had the twins bundled up for a walk to the library, where she could use free Wi-Fi while they napped in their stroller. Afternoons were spent at home, alternating between childcare and programming, often with Ethan asleep in a sling across her chest while she typed one-handed. Evenings meant more client work until midnight, interrupted by feedings and diaper changes. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford, averaging 3 to 4 broken hours each night. Dark circles formed permanent residences beneath her eyes, and her clothes hung loose on her frame despite the meager meals she forced herself to eat for the sake of her milk supply. The twins reached 3 months on a crisp October day. Rebecca celebrated by splurging on a takeout coffee, her first non-essential purchase in months. She sat on a park bench watching the Manhattan skyline in the distance while Emma and Ethan dozed in their stroller. "That's where we're going," she whispered to them. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday." That night brought the worst colic episode yet. Both twins screamed inconsolably for hours, their tiny faces contorted in pain. Rebecca tried every trick she'd read about: swaddling, white noise, gentle bouncing, warm baths, but nothing worked. By 2 in the morning, she was pacing the small apartment, a baby on each shoulder, her own tears mixing with theirs. When her laptop pinged with an urgent client notification, "Complete system failure, emergency assistance needed," Rebecca felt her heart sink. The client was her most consistent source of income, a small accounting firm whose outdated servers frequently crashed. Missing this call would mean losing their business. With trembling hands, she placed the still-crying twins in their bassinets and turned to her computer. The remote diagnostic took nearly an hour, during which the baby's cries reached fever pitch. Rebecca typed commands with one hand while desperately rocking the double bassinet with her foot, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered, unsure whether she was addressing the babies or the stubborn server. "Please, please, please." At 3:37 in the morning, the server finally responded to her commands. As Rebecca implemented the fix, she noticed a sudden silence from behind her. Turning slowly, afraid to hope, she found both twins had finally exhausted themselves into sleep, their tear-stained cheeks still flushed from crying. Rebecca sank to the floor between the computer desk and the bassinets, her body trembling with exhaustion. 3 months of relentless struggle crashed over her. The physical recovery from childbirth, the financial devastation, the constant fear of failure, the bone-deep fatigue that never lifted. For one brief, terrible moment, she allowed Marshall's cruel words to echo in her mind. "A child would be an unbearable burden for my career." She looked at the sleeping twins, their perfect features illuminated by the glow of her computer screen. Emma's delicate fingers were curled into a tiny fist. Ethan's mouth made small, suckling movements in his sleep. these miraculous beings that Marshall had rejected without a second thought. Something shifted inside Rebecca in that moment, a crystallization of purpose that cut through her exhaustion with startling clarity. "You are not a burden," she whispered to her sleeping children, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You are my strength, and one day everyone will see what Marshall Reynolds discarded. I promise you, he will swallow every cruel word he said about us." She pulled herself up from the floor and reached for a legal pad. For the next 3 hours, while the twins slept peacefully for the first time in days, Rebecca outlined a comprehensive plan that went far beyond mere survival. Her 5-year strategy was methodical, detailed, and ambitious. Year 1. Establish a steady remote client base while expanding her programming skills. Year 2. Develop a specialized security application for small financial businesses, an underserved market she'd identified during her time at Reynolds Enterprises. Year 3. Secure seed funding and register Anderson Tech Solutions as an official business. Years 4 and 5. Scale the operation and establish a physical office in Manhattan. Rebecca integrated childcare needs, educational milestones for the twins, and financial projections into the plan. Each component was meticulously calculated and cross-referenced, creating a roadmap that acknowledged the challenges of single motherhood while refusing to be limited by them. When the twins awoke at dawn, Rebecca was ready. She fed and changed them with renewed purpose, her movements efficient despite her lack of sleep. That morning she made 3 important calls. One to a virtual assistant agency that specialized in helping remote workers, one to an online coding boot camp offering flexible payment plans, and one to a Mommy and Me group in the neighborhood that Lucia had mentioned. Over the following weeks, Rebecca implemented her plan with military precision. The virtual assistant helped manage client communications during the hours when Rebecca needed to focus on the twins. The coding boot camp allowed her to upgrade her skills during late-night sessions after the babies were asleep. The Mommy group provided not just socialization for the twins, but valuable networking opportunities with other working mothers who shared resources and job leads. By the time the twins reached 4 months, Rebecca had established a stable client base that allowed her to pay her bills on time, just barely, but consistently. She converted a corner of the apartment into a more efficient workspace, with the baby's play area positioned so she could engage with them while working. "You're making this look easy," Lucia commented one evening as Rebecca simultaneously fed Ethan a bottle, bounced Emma in a bouncer with her foot, and debugged a client's website. Rebecca laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even herself. "Trust me, nothing about this is easy." "But you're doing it," Lucia pointed out. "Most people would have broken down by now." Rebecca glanced at the 5-year plan pinned to the wall, then at her beautiful children. "Failure isn't an option when they're counting on me." As December approached, bringing with it memories of Marshall's rejection exactly 1 year earlier, Rebecca refused to indulge in self-pity. Instead, she channeled her energy into developing a prototype of her security application, coding during naps, testing features while the twins played on their activity mat, refining algorithms in the precious pre-dawn hours when the apartment was quiet. The twins celebrated their first Christmas surrounded by gifts that cost more in creativity than currency. Toys fashioned from safe household items, books borrowed from the library, clothes purchased from thrift stores but washed and wrapped with care. Rebecca splurged on a single professional photograph of the 3 of them, the twins dressed in matching holiday outfits, her own smile tired but genuine. She sent copies of the photo to her small circle of supporters, Lucia, Rita from the cafe, Mrs. Guzman, and the kind pediatrician who had helped arrange a payment plan for the twins' checkups. She did not send one to Marshall or anyone at Reynolds Enterprises. That chapter was closed. As the new year dawned, Rebecca reviewed her progress against the 5-year plan. She was ahead of schedule on client acquisition, slightly behind on application development, and exactly on target for the twins' developmental milestones. Emma had discovered her hands and spent hours examining her fingers with scholarly concentration. Ethan had mastered rolling over and seemed determined to crawl well before the typical age. "We're going to make it," Rebecca told them during their morning routine as she dressed them in warm clothes for their daily walk. Not just survive, thrive. While she pushed the stroller through the crisp winter air, Rebecca spotted a "For Rent" sign on a storefront in a slightly better neighborhood. The space was small, probably overpriced, but it sparked an idea. Perhaps the timeline for establishing a physical office could be accelerated if she found the right investors. That evening, as the twins played on their activity mat, Rebecca began researching small business grants for women in technology. Most required an established business with operating history, but a few were designed specifically for startups with innovative concepts. She worked through the night, drafting grant applications and refining her business plan. By morning, she had identified 3 potential funding sources and created a compelling pitch for her security application. As she watched the sunrise over the Bronx, the twins still sleeping peacefully in their cribs, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not just determination or grim resolve, but genuine optimism about the future. While that rudimentary algorithm ran its first successful test that morning, Rebecca couldn't possibly imagine that this code would become the foundation of technology that, in a decade, would revolutionize Wall Street and establish Anderson Tech as a global billion-dollar powerhouse. The first successful algorithm test marked a turning point for Rebecca. 3 years raced by with the peculiar duality that defines early parenthood: days that stretched endlessly, but years that vanished in a blink. By the time Emma and Ethan celebrated their 3rd birthday, Rebecca had transformed her life from desperate survival to cautious stability. Their new Brooklyn apartment, while still modest, represented a monumental upgrade from the cramped Bronx space they'd left behind. Sunlight filtered through actual windows, not the airshaft view they'd endured for years, and illuminated a space that Rebecca had furnished with strategic care: functional, clean, and organized, with distinct areas for living, playing, and working. "Mama, look!" Ethan called, pointing to the tablet screen where he'd successfully completed a puzzle game designed for children twice his age. At 3, his dark hair and serious eyes gave him an appearance of perpetual concentration that often made strangers mistake him for being older. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Rebecca replied, simultaneously typing the final lines of code for a client proposal. Her office occupied one corner of the living room, a proper desk with a dual-monitor setup, and an ergonomic chair she'd splurged on after a particularly lucrative contract. Emma toddled over, her curls bouncing with each determined step. "My turn, Ethan," she declared, reaching for the tablet with the entitled confidence of a child who had never been denied knowledge. Rebecca smiled as Ethan reluctantly surrendered the device to his sister. Even at 3, their personalities had crystallized into distinct but complementary patterns: Ethan methodical and pattern-oriented, Emma verbal and assertive. Together they formed a formidable team, already exhibiting the intuitive cooperation of twins. The notification sound from her laptop pulled Rebecca's attention back to work. A video conference request from a potential client, her 3rd this week. The growing client list of Anderson Tech Solutions had evolved from desperation gigs to selective partnerships, allowing Rebecca to focus on security implementations for small financial businesses, exactly as her 5-year plan had projected. "10 minutes until our meeting, guys," she announced, straightening her blouse, thrift store silk, but well-pressed and professional. "Remember our cafe rules?" "Quiet voices and coloring only," the twins recited in unison, already familiar with the routine of accompanying their mother to client meetings at the neighborhood cafe that had become Rebecca's de facto conference room. The cafe owner, Gabriel, greeted them warmly when they arrived. "The Anderson team!" he called out, already preparing the back corner table that Rebecca preferred for its privacy and proximity to electrical outlets. "Your usual?" "Thanks, Gabriel." Rebecca smiled gratefully, settling the twins with their coloring books and educational tablets. "Meeting should be about 45 minutes today." By the time her client, the owner of a boutique investment firm concerned about data security, arrived, Rebecca had transformed from harried mother to confident consultant. Her presentation was flawless, her technical explanations clear without being condescending. From the corner of her eye, she could see Emma and Ethan behaving perfectly, absorbed in their activities. "I'm impressed," the client admitted as they concluded, "especially by how you manage." He gestured discreetly toward the twins. Rebecca's smile remained professional. Anderson Tech Solutions offers comprehensive security packages that include ongoing maintenance and 24/7 support, she replied, smoothly redirecting the conversation back to business. "And yes, we can implement the entire system within your timeline." Walking home after securing the contract, Rebecca felt a surge of satisfaction. 3 years ago, she'd been fighting for survival. Now, she was turning down clients who didn't align with her business vision. The twins skipped ahead on the sidewalk, stopping to examine interesting pebbles and fallen leaves with the scientific curiosity that characterized their interactions with the world. That evening, as Rebecca prepared dinner in their small but functional kitchen, her phone rang. Jenny, the part-time college student she'd hired 6 months earlier to help with both technical work and occasional childcare. "The Berkowitz implementation is complete," Jenny reported, "and I've drafted responses to those RFPs you flagged." "Perfect timing," Rebecca replied. "I just landed the Morrison account today. Can you come by tomorrow to help with the initial setup while I draft the security protocols?" With Jenny's assistance, Rebecca had been able to increase her client load while maintaining quality time with the twins. The arrangement benefited both of them. Jenny received mentorship and flexible hours that accommodated her computer science classes, while Rebecca gained precious hours of uninterrupted work time. Later that night, after tucking the twins into bed with their favorite story, Rebecca sat cross-legged on her own bed with her laptop, a cup of tea cooling beside her. 4 hours of focused coding lay ahead, her standard nightly routine after the children were asleep. The constant upgrade of her skills had become as necessary as breathing, each new certification and programming language adding another weapon to her professional arsenal. As the clock ticked past midnight, Rebecca rubbed her tired eyes and glanced at the photo frame on her nightstand. Emma and Ethan on their recent birthday, faces smeared with cake and radiant with joy. The image renewed her energy, and she turned back to her screen, determined to master this new encryption method before dawn. Sleep had become a carefully budgeted resource, doled out in 4-hour increments that were never quite enough. The dark circles beneath her eyes had become a permanent feature, concealed during client meetings with carefully applied makeup, but evident in the privacy of her home. Morning arrived with relentless punctuality. Rebecca woke 15 minutes before the twins, a sacred window she used to review client emails and prepare for the day. By the time Emma and Ethan bounced into her room, already chattering about their dreams, she had answered 12 emails and scheduled 3 follow-up calls. "School day," Emma announced, climbing onto the bed with impressive agility for a 3-year-old. "Park day first," Rebecca corrected gently, catching Ethan as he launched himself toward her. "School is tomorrow." The prestigious preschool where the twins spent 3 mornings each week represented Rebecca's most significant investment in their future. She had researched dozens of options before finding one that offered both academic excellence and financial assistance. The partial scholarship they'd received still left tuition payments that strained her budget, but watching the twins flourish among peers and dedicated teachers confirmed the value of every sacrificed dollar. At the playground later that morning, Rebecca balanced her open laptop on her knees while keeping one eye on the twins as they navigated the slide. The other mothers gave her curious glances, some judgmental, some sympathetic, but Rebecca had long since grown immune to the silent commentary on her working mother routine. "Mrs. Anderson?" A voice interrupted her concentration. Rebecca looked up to see Ms. Collins, the twins' preschool director. "It's Ms. A," she corrected automatically. "Good morning." "I'm glad I ran into you," Ms. Collins said, settling beside her on the bench. I wanted to discuss Ethan's assessment results." Rebecca felt a familiar tightening in her chest, the instinctive maternal alarm at any discussion of her children that included the word assessment. "His pattern recognition skills tested nearly 4 years above age level," Ms. Collins continued, her expression softening at Rebecca's visible relief. "And Emma's language acquisition is similarly advanced. I'd like to recommend them both for our accelerated program." "That's wonderful," Rebecca managed, pride momentarily overwhelming her professional composure. "We do encourage parental involvement in the program," Ms. Collins added carefully. "I noticed on their enrollment forms that there's no father listed." Rebecca closed her laptop with deliberate calm. "The twins have everything they need," she stated, her tone polite but final. "Their father isn't involved." That evening, after the twins were bathed and dressed in pajamas, Rebecca sat between their beds for their nightly routine. "Time for our favorite question," she announced. "What did you learn today?" "I learned about triangles," Ethan declared. "They have 3 sides and 3 corners." "I learned a new word," Emma countered. "Extraordinary. It means very, very special." Rebecca smiled. "That's right. And do you know what's extraordinary? You two." After kisses and final tuck-ins, Rebecca retreated to her workspace, turning her attention to the application she'd been developing for months, a specialized security system designed for small financial institutions that couldn't afford enterprise-level protection but needed more than off-the-shelf solutions. The work consumed her until well past midnight. When she finally crawled into bed, exhaustion hit with physical force. Yet before sleep claimed her, Rebecca reviewed her mental checklist for the next day: client calls during the twins' morning preschool, development work during their afternoon nap, proposal drafting after bedtime. Every minute accounted for, every opportunity maximized. The rhythm of their lives continued through the changing seasons. Rebecca's client list grew steadily, allowing her to move from project-based work to ongoing security maintenance contracts that provided more stable income. The twins thrived in their accelerated program, bringing home art projects and stories that papered the refrigerator and filled Rebecca's phone storage with proud photographs. On a crisp autumn morning, as Rebecca filled out school permission slips at the kitchen table, Emma approached with a serious expression that seemed too mature for her small face. "Mama," she began, climbing onto a chair, "Tyler said everyone has a daddy. Where is our daddy?" The question Rebecca had been preparing for since their birth still landed like a physical blow. Ethan, never far from his sister, appeared in the doorway, equally curious but characteristically more reserved in his approach. Rebecca set down her pen and chose her words with care. "Some families have a mommy and daddy. Some have 2 mommies or 2 daddies. Some, like ours, have just a mommy." "But why?" Emma persisted. "Because families come in different shapes," Rebecca explained, opening her arms to gather both children close. "What matters is that we love each other and take care of each other. We're strong together, just the 3 of us." The answer satisfied them for now, though Rebecca knew the questions would return with increasing complexity as they grew older. For today, it was enough to hold them close and feel their complete trust in her protection. Summer transitioned to fall, and with the changing leaves came a significant opportunity: Rebecca's first presentation to a financial services firm with over 100 employees, considerably larger than her usual clients. She had spent weeks preparing, refining her security solution to address their specific vulnerabilities. Standing in the conference room before a panel of executives, Rebecca presented with the confidence of someone who had overcome far greater challenges than corporate skepticism. Her technical expertise was evident, her business case compelling. When the questioning turned aggressive, led by an older executive clearly uncomfortable with a young woman in a leadership role, Rebecca countered each point with precise, unflappable responses. "We'll be in touch," the CEO concluded, clearly impressed despite his initial reservations. The following week, Rebecca received the call she'd been hoping for. Not only had she secured the contract, but the company wanted to feature her security solution in their industry newsletter, her first significant publicity opportunity. The modest celebration that evening included ice cream for the twins and a rare glass of wine for Rebecca. As Ethan and Emma debated the superior merits of chocolate versus strawberry with the seriousness of Supreme Court justices, Rebecca silently toasted her small but growing empire. That night, after the twins were asleep, Rebecca allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She opened her laptop and, after a moment's hesitation, typed Reynolds Enterprises into the search bar. The company's website appeared, slick and corporate, featuring a leadership page where Marshall Reynolds smiled confidently from a professional headshot. Chief Strategy Officer, the caption read, the vice presidency he'd been so desperate to secure when he'd discarded her. Rebecca closed the browser without clicking further. The past remained firmly in the past, relevant only as a milestone from which to measure her progress. The 5-year plan pinned to her wall was nearly 3 years into execution, with most targets either met or exceeded. The future, their future, continued to unfold according to her careful design. When the small regional business journal published an article featuring promising startups, with Rebecca's photo and a brief profile of Anderson Tech Solutions, no one could have imagined that in just 5 years she would grace the cover of Forbes, leading a technological revolution that would forever transform Wall Street. The modest regional business journal's feature on Anderson Tech Solutions became an unexpected catalyst. The morning after publication, Rebecca's phone rang continuously with inquiries from potential clients who had seen the article. By the end of the week, she had scheduled more consultations than the previous month combined. The exposure, though limited to local business circles, marked a shift in how the world perceived her company. No longer just a scrappy startup, but a recognized player in the cybersecurity field. "You're growing faster than your plan projected," Jenny observed during their weekly strategy meeting. Now, in her final year of computer science studies, Jenny had evolved from part-time assistant to Rebecca's most trusted team member. "We might need to consider additional help soon." Rebecca nodded, reviewing the calendar on her tablet where colored blocks represented client commitments. "I've been thinking the same thing. These new contracts will require more hands-on implementation than we can manage just between us." That evening, as she updated her 5-year plan, now halfway to completion, Rebecca added a new milestone: hire 2 technical specialists by quarter's end. The twins, now 7 years old, watched her work from the kitchen table where they were completing homework with the focused intensity that had become their trademark. "Is your business getting bigger, Mom?" Ethan asked, looking up from a math worksheet filled with problems meant for 4th graders. "It is," Rebecca confirmed, amazed as always by his perceptiveness. "How did you know?" "You're using your planning voice," Emma explained matter-of-factly, not looking up from the book she was reading, a chapter book several grades above her level. "It's different from your regular voice." Rebecca laughed, crossing the room to drop kisses on both their heads. "You two miss nothing, do you?" 7 months after the article appeared, Rebecca sat across from Thomas Braverman, CEO of New England Regional Bank, a mid-sized institution that had been hacked 3 times in the previous year. The meeting represented a significant leap for Anderson Tech, a potential client many times larger than any they'd previously secured. "I'll be frank, Ms. Anderson," Braverman said, leaning forward across his mahogany desk. "My board is skeptical about entrusting our security to such a small operation, but our last 3 providers failed us spectacularly." Rebecca maintained steady eye contact. "With respect, Mr. Braverman, those providers failed you because they applied generic solutions to specific vulnerabilities. Anderson Tech specializes in customized security implementations for financial institutions. We don't just install software, we analyze patterns, predict breach methodologies, and create defenses unique to your organization's architecture." The technical presentation that followed was comprehensive, authoritative, and above all, accessible. Rebecca had learned that the most sophisticated security solutions were worthless if clients couldn't understand them. By the meeting's end, Braverman's skepticism had visibly transformed into cautious optimism. "We'll need board approval," he warned as they shook hands, "but I'm recommending we proceed with Anderson Tech." 3 weeks later, Rebecca signed the largest contract of her career to date, her hand steady despite the internal explosion of triumph. The New England Regional Bank deal would not only provide financial stability, but serve as a reference point for approaching other regional banks facing similar security challenges. It was the breakthrough her 5-year plan had projected, right on schedule. That night, after signing the contract, Rebecca took the twins out for a celebratory dinner at an actual restaurant rather than their usual quick-service places. The small Italian bistro in Brooklyn represented an extravagance they rarely indulged in. "Can we order dessert?" Emma negotiated, ever the verbal strategist, as they reviewed menus. "I think that can be arranged," Rebecca agreed, allowing herself to fully savor the moment. "Today is special." "Because you got the big bank job?" Ethan asked, his mathematical mind always connecting dots. Rebecca nodded. "That's right. It's a big step for our company." "Our company," Emma repeated, emphasizing the possessive pronoun. "When we grow up, will we work there too?" The question caught Rebecca off guard. Though she'd built Anderson Tech with her children's future always in mind, she'd never explicitly considered them joining the business. "You'll both have your own paths to choose," she said carefully. "But yes, if you wanted to, there would always be a place for you." Ethan considered this with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "I'd make the computers safer," he decided. "And I'd talk to the clients," Emma added, "because you always say I'm good with words." Rebecca felt a surge of emotion that threatened to overflow into public tears. She masked it by taking a sip of water, composing herself before responding. "You'd both be brilliant at it." The New England Regional Bank contract necessitated expansion. Rebecca hired 2 security specialists with complementary skills: Marcus, a network architecture expert, and Layla, a former ethical hacker. With 4 team members plus Rebecca, Anderson Tech Solutions outgrew its virtual existence and required physical office space. The small commercial suite in downtown Brooklyn wasn't impressive by Manhattan standards, but to Rebecca, signing the 2-year lease felt momentous. The space included 3 private offices, a conference room, and a small reception area, more than adequate for their current needs with room for limited growth. "We should have a sign," Jenny suggested as they arranged furniture in the new space. "A real one, with the Anderson Tech logo." Rebecca ran her hand along the freshly painted wall. "You're right. We've earned that." With the office established, Rebecca restructured her schedule to maintain balance between growing her business and raising the twins. School drop-offs and pickups remained sacred, as did dinner and homework time. Client meetings were scheduled during school hours when possible, and the team developed a rotation for handling after-hours emergencies that allowed Rebecca to preserve her evenings with the children. The twins continued to flourish academically. Ethan's mathematical abilities had progressed to the point where his school recommended specialized testing, which revealed an aptitude for complex problem-solving rarely seen in children his age. He was invited to participate in a citywide mathematics program for gifted students that met on Saturday mornings at a nearby university. Emma's talents manifested differently but no less impressively. Her reading comprehension tested at high school level, and her creative writing samples were selected for publication in an anthology of young authors. Most surprisingly, when the twins started music lessons, a luxury Rebecca could finally afford, Emma displayed an immediate affinity for the violin, her fingers finding notes with intuitive precision that amazed her instructor. "Have you considered specialized schools?" asked Ms. Winters, the twins' second-grade teacher, during the fall parent-teacher conference. "Both Emma and Ethan would benefit from more advanced curricula than we can provide, even with our enrichment programs." Rebecca had researched this possibility extensively. "I've applied for scholarship consideration at Brookfield Academy," she admitted. "Their focus on individualized learning seems ideal for both children, but the tuition is substantial, "I'll write a strong recommendation," Ms. Winters promised. "Children with their potential deserve every opportunity." The Brookfield acceptance letters arrived in December, complete with partial scholarship offers that made the prestigious private education almost, but not quite, affordable. Rebecca spent a weekend revising budgets and projections, determined to make it work without compromising the business's growth trajectory. The solution came from an unexpected quarter. A technology magazine requested an interview with Rebecca for a feature on women entrepreneurs in cybersecurity. The resulting article caught the attention of a venture capital firm specializing in female-founded tech companies who reached out to discuss potential investment in Anderson Tech. Rebecca approached the possibility with characteristic caution. "I'm not interested in giving up control," she told the venture capitalist during their initial meeting. "Anderson Tech's direction and values aren't negotiable." "We're not looking to change your vision," the investor assured her. "We want to accelerate it. Minority investment, board observer seat, no operational control. What we offer beyond capital is network access, connections to clients and partners that might otherwise take years to develop." The terms they eventually negotiated allowed Rebecca to maintain decisive ownership while securing capital for strategic growth, including sufficient salary increases to cover the twins' private school tuition. The morning Rebecca drove the twins to their first day at Brookfield Academy represented a milestone in their journey. The school's manicured campus and stately brick buildings stood in stark contrast to the public school they'd attended previously. "It looks like a castle," Emma whispered as they approached the entrance, clutching her new backpack with uncharacteristic nervousness. "Remember," Rebecca told them both, kneeling to straighten Ethan's collar, "you belong here just as much as anyone. Your minds earned you these spots." Watching them walk into the school, Rebecca felt the familiar, bittersweet ache of maternal pride mixed with awareness of passing time. These confident 7-year-olds bore little resemblance to the tiny, vulnerable twins she'd once carried home to a cramped Bronx apartment. That afternoon, Rebecca attended her first meeting of the Brookfield Parents Association. The gathering took place in an elegantly appointed meeting room where women in designer clothing clustered in established social groups. Rebecca's business attire, professional but purchased with pragmatic budget consciousness, marked her as an outsider as clearly as her arrival alone. "You must be one of the new scholarship parents," observed a blonde woman wearing what Rebecca recognized as a $5,000 Burberry coat. "I'm Catherine Winthrop, Association President. Whose mother are you?" "Emma and Ethan Anderson," Rebecca replied, extending her hand with the same confidence she brought to business meetings. "And yes, they received partial scholarships, which they earned through academic merit." Catherine's smile remained fixed. "Twins? How challenging. And their father? Will he be joining the father's committee?" The question was delivered with calculated casualness, but Rebecca had navigated far more intimidating situations than socialite interrogations. "My children have everything they need," she responded pleasantly but firmly. "I'm both mother and father to them." Word of Rebecca's single parenthood spread quickly through the association. Some mothers avoided her as though divorce, or worse, unwed motherhood, might be contagious. Others approached with performative sympathy that thinly veiled curiosity about her circumstances. Rebecca maintained polite but firm boundaries, neither apologizing for her family structure nor satisfying their hunger for personal details. The twins, meanwhile, adjusted to their new school with characteristic resilience. Ethan quickly distinguished himself in mathematics and science, while Emma shone in humanities and continued to progress rapidly with the violin, earning a coveted spot in the school's advanced string ensemble despite being its youngest member. By the school year's end, both children had secured their places in the academic and social fabric of Brookfield. Their undeniable talents and grounded personalities won over classmates and teachers alike, and even the most judgmental parents were forced to acknowledge that the Anderson twins brought distinction to the school. When Rebecca delivered the final phase of the New England Regional Bank security implementation, 3 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget, The client's satisfaction translated into something more valuable than the substantial payment: referrals. Braverman personally recommended Anderson Tech to his counterparts at 3 other regional banks, all of which had experienced security breaches in the past year. "Your solution hasn't just prevented attacks," Braverman told Rebecca during their final review meeting. "It's given us something we hadn't expected: predictive capabilities that flag suspicious patterns before they develop into breach attempts. That's innovation worth talking about." The resulting contracts required additional expansion. Rebecca hired 3 more specialists and secured a larger office space closer to Manhattan, where most of their financial clients were based. Anderson Tech Solutions had grown from a desperate mother's midnight idea to a respected boutique security firm with 8 employees and an impressive client roster. When a small regional technology conference invited Rebecca to speak about security innovations for mid-sized financial institutions, she approached the opportunity with characteristic thoroughness. Her presentation was meticulously researched, technically precise, and delivered with the confidence of someone who had earned her expertise through practical application rather than theoretical study. Anderson Tech Solutions represents a new approach to financial security, she explained to the audience of industry professionals. "We believe that one-size-fits-all solutions fail because they address symptoms rather than underlying vulnerabilities. Our customized implementations analyze your specific risk profile and create defenses tailored to your actual, not theoretical, threats." The speech generated immediate interest. Business cards filled Rebecca's pocket, and 3 potential clients requested meetings before she even left the stage. Most significantly, a reporter from a prestigious technology journal requested an interview for a feature on innovative approaches to cybersecurity. That evening, as Rebecca reviewed her presentation notes in preparation for the interview, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The 5-year plan pinned above her desk, now weathered and marked with check marks beside completed milestones, had transformed from aspirational document to historical record. Most targets had been met or exceeded, and the trajectory pointed definitively upward. When the regional technology magazine published a small article about her innovative approach to financial security, no one could have predicted that in just 5 years she would be on the cover of Forbes, commanding a revolution that would transform Wall Street forever. The Forbes magazine profile, with its bold headline, "The Woman Who Revolutionized Financial Security," sat framed on the wall of Rebecca's expansive office, a reminder of how far she had come. 4 years had passed since that small regional magazine feature, and Anderson Tech Solutions had transformed from a promising startup into a formidable presence in the cybersecurity landscape. From her office window on the 32nd floor of a gleaming midtown tower, Rebecca could see Manhattan spread before her like a kingdom she was gradually conquering. The view was a far cry from the dingy Bronx apartment window where she'd once watched this same skyline with twins in her arms and determination in her heart. "Ms. Anderson, your 10 o'clock is here," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Send them in, please," Rebecca replied, smoothing her tailored charcoal suit, no longer thrift store finds but custom-made by a Brooklyn designer who understood that power dressing for women could be both elegant and formidable. The conference room where she met with clients now occupied the central space of an entire floor dedicated to Anderson Tech Solutions. 50 employees worked across the open concept workspace, a diverse team of cybersecurity experts, developers, and client representatives. The company's evolution from Rebecca's one-woman operation to this thriving enterprise had been methodical and strategic, exactly as her 5-year plan had projected. "The Jenkins implementation is complete," reported Marcus, now her chief technology officer, during the afternoon executive meeting. "They've already referred us to 2 other investment firms. Your reputation is becoming our best marketing tool." Rebecca nodded, making notes on her tablet. "Schedule follow-up assessments for 60 and 90 days. I want performance metrics we can showcase." The meeting continued with department updates, expansion proposals, and strategic planning. Rebecca led with the quiet authority of someone who had earned every increment of success through relentless work and uncompromising standards. Her executive team, now 6 strong, including Jenny as Chief Operating Officer, operated with the cohesion of people united by a shared vision. "One last item," Rebecca said as the meeting concluded. "I've been approached about speaking at the National Financial Security Conference next month. I've accepted." "That's huge," Jenny remarked. "The biggest names in the industry attend that conference." Rebecca smiled. "I know. It's time to introduce ourselves to the major leagues." Later that afternoon, Rebecca left the office early, a rare occurrence, to attend Ethan's mathematics competition at Columbia University. At 11 years old, her son had progressed far beyond even the advanced curriculum at Brookfield Academy. His paper on number theory had caught the attention of university professors, earning him an invitation to compete against high school students in a citywide competition. The university auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as participants and parents gathered. Rebecca found a seat near the front, noticing as always that she was one of the few solo parents in attendance. Most children had both mother and father present, some with additional family members forming cheering sections. Ethan spotted her from the stage and gave a small, serious nod, his version of exuberant acknowledgement. His dark hair and thoughtful eyes reminded Rebecca increasingly of Marshall, though she refused to dwell on the resemblance. The genetic connection was undeniable, but everything that mattered about Ethan, his character, his kindness, his intellectual curiosity, had been shaped by her influence alone. When the competition began, Rebecca watched with pride as Ethan methodically worked through complex problems that would challenge college students. His focus was absolute, his confidence quiet but unwavering. When the results were announced, Ethan's first-place finish surprised everyone except his mother. "The youngest winner in the competition's history," the mathematics department chair announced, presenting Ethan with a trophy almost comically large for his slender frame. "Did you see the last problem?" Ethan asked as they walked to the car afterward, more interested in discussing the mathematical challenges than celebrating his victory. There was an elegant solution using Fibonacci sequences that reduced the steps by half. Rebecca smiled, recognizing his excitement despite his serious demeanor. "I'd love to hear about it over dinner. Emma's recital starts at 7, so we should hurry." The contrast between her twins' exceptional talents never ceased to amaze Rebecca. While Ethan excelled in the precise world of mathematics, Emma had blossomed into a remarkably gifted musician. Her violin playing had progressed so rapidly that Brookfield's music director had arranged an audition with Juilliard's pre-college program, where she had been accepted as one of their youngest students. That evening, Rebecca sat in Juilliard's recital hall, watching Emma perform a Vivaldi concerto with technical precision and emotional depth that belied her 11 years. Her daughter stood confidently before the audience, auburn hair swept into an elegant knot, drawing her bow across the strings with both power and delicacy. The applause that followed her performance was genuine and enthusiastic, with several faculty members nodding appreciatively. "Mom, did you record it for my portfolio?" Emma asked afterward, practical even in her moment of triumph. "Professor Abramson said I should compile performance videos for summer program applications." "Every second," Rebecca confirmed, showing her the recording. "You were magnificent." The drive home to their Brooklyn brownstone, purchased the previous year as a testament to Anderson Tech's success, was filled with the twins' animated conversation. Emma analyzing her performance with professional precision, Ethan explaining his mathematical solutions with scholarly enthusiasm. Rebecca listened, occasionally glancing at them in the rearview mirror, marveling at these extraordinary people she had raised while simultaneously building a business empire. The brownstone represented another milestone in their journey, a permanent home with space for each child to have their own bedroom, a dedicated music room for Emma's practice, and a home office where Rebecca could work without leaving the twins alone. The neighborhood offered excellent security, proximity to Brookfield Academy, and a sense of community that their previous apartments had lacked. That night, After the twins had gone to bed, Rebecca sat in her home office reviewing quarterly financial reports. Anderson Tech Solutions had captured 32% of the regional financial security market, with projections showing continued growth. The company's proprietary security algorithms, many of which incorporated Ethan's mathematical insights, had proven so effective that several larger banks had begun inquiring about implementation. Rebecca's phone chimed with an email notification. Opening it, she found a message from the conference organizers confirming her keynote address at the National Financial Security Conference. The subject line contained the title they'd selected for her presentation: Outsider Innovation: How Anderson Tech Revolutionized Financial Security. The word outsider caught her attention. Early in her career, Rebecca had hidden her background, afraid that her humble beginnings and single motherhood would undermine her credibility in the male-dominated world of finance and technology. As her success grew, however, she had deliberately incorporated her journey into her professional narrative. The outsider who brought fresh perspectives to industry problems, the single mother who built a business while raising twins, the woman who succeeded in a field where female CEOs remained rare. This calculated transparency had transformed potential liabilities into marketing advantages. Clients were drawn to the authenticity of her story and the resilience it demonstrated. Young women in technology sought her mentorship, and industry publications increasingly featured her as an example of entrepreneurial determination. The following morning, Rebecca's leadership team gathered for their weekly strategy meeting. The agenda included expansion plans that would take Anderson Tech Solutions into new territory. "We've saturated the regional market," Rebecca explained, standing before the digital wall display showing market penetration data. "It's time to pursue national clients. The conference next month provides our platform." "Our current infrastructure can't support national expansion," Marcus cautioned. "We'd need significant scaling capabilities." Rebecca nodded. "I've been expecting this inflection point. I'm prepared to consider outside investment to fund the expansion. Minority investment only, with clear protections for our corporate culture and vision." The discussion that followed was rigorous and detailed. Rebecca had built a team that respected her leadership while providing honest feedback, a balance that had contributed significantly to the company's success. By meeting's end, they had developed a strategic expansion plan that maintained Anderson Tech's core values while creating pathways to wider market penetration. As Rebecca walked through the office afterward, she observed her team with quiet pride. Diverse in background, unified in purpose, they represented everything she had envisioned when creating the company. The culture she had established, collaborative, innovative, and family-friendly, stood in stark contrast to the cutthroat environment at Reynolds Enterprises, where personal sacrifice was expected and vulnerability viewed as weakness. That afternoon, while reviewing potential investment partners, Rebecca allowed herself a rare indulgence. She opened her browser and searched for Reynolds Enterprises' current projects. The company's website appeared, sleek and corporate, but a recent news tab caught her attention. Reynolds Properties faces delays on downtown development. The article detailed problems with the company's flagship project, budget overruns, construction delays, and rumors of management turmoil. Further research revealed a pattern of similar issues across multiple Reynolds developments, along with several pending lawsuits from contractors alleging non-payment. Rebecca closed the browser, feeling neither pleasure nor regret at the company's troubles. Reynolds Enterprises had become simply another potential acquisition target to analyze dispassionately, its weaknesses to be evaluated, its assets assessed for potential value. The twins' weekend activities provided welcome distraction from business considerations. Saturday morning brought Ethan's advanced mathematics seminar at NYU, followed by Emma's rehearsal with the Youth Symphony. Sunday included family time at the Museum of Natural History, a tradition Rebecca had maintained despite her increasingly demanding schedule. "Mom, look at this," Emma called, pointing to an exhibit on sound waves. "It's exactly what Professor Abramson was explaining about violin resonance. And these patterns follow the same mathematical principles I'm studying," Ethan added, examining the spiral arrangement of a nautilus shell. Rebecca watched them make connections between their specialized interests and the wider world, their minds constantly integrating new information. These moments, seeing their intellects flourish, witnessing their growing confidence, sustained her through the long hours and constant pressure of building her company. Monday morning brought an unexpected encounter. Rebecca was presenting at a financial technology roundtable when she spotted a familiar face among the attendees, James Whitford, one of Marshall's closest associates from Reynolds Enterprises. He showed no sign of recognizing her as she delivered her presentation on emerging security threats to financial institutions. Afterward, as attendees networked over coffee, Whitford approached her. "Ms. Anderson, impressive presentation," he said, extending his hand. "James Whitford, Reynolds Enterprises." Rebecca shook his hand firmly, meeting his gaze with professional politeness. "Thank you, Mr. Whitford. I'm familiar with Reynolds Enterprises." "Really? I don't recall our paths crossing before." "They haven't," Rebecca replied smoothly. "But I make it my business to know the major players in New York real estate. Your company's recent downtown development has been in the news." Whitford's expression tightened slightly. "Just temporary setbacks. Every major project faces challenges." "Of course," Rebecca agreed, her smile professionally sympathetic. "I hope things improve for your team." As she walked away, Rebecca felt a momentary sense of satisfaction. The man hadn't recognized her. The insignificant assistant Marshall had discarded was so thoroughly transformed that his own colleagues saw only a successful CEO, not the woman who had once served coffee in their meetings. That evening, Rebecca attended the twins' parent-teacher conferences at Brookfield Academy. Their teachers spoke glowingly of both children's academic achievements, but also emphasized their personal qualities: Ethan's quiet leadership in group projects, Emma's generosity in helping struggling classmates with music theory. "They're remarkably well-adjusted," commented Mrs. Hargrove, the twins' homeroom teacher, "especially considering they're being raised by a single parent with such demanding professional responsibilities." "We're a team," Rebecca explained simply. "They understand that everything we do, my work, their education, contributes to our shared future." The autumn months brought increasing recognition for Anderson Tech Solutions. Rebecca's keynote address at the National Financial Security Conference generated substantial media coverage, positioning the company as an innovative disruptor in a traditionally conservative industry. New clients approached weekly, attracted by the company's reputation for customized security solutions and impeccable service. Rebecca maintained her practice of discreetly monitoring Reynolds Enterprises, noting each quarterly report that showed declining profits and market share. The company that Marshall had been so desperate to help lead was faltering under outdated business models and poor strategic decisions. While she took no pleasure in the company's struggles, Rebecca recognized a potential opportunity forming, one that would require perfect timing and substantial resources. While Rebecca archived the article about Reynolds Properties' financial troubles, she couldn't possibly imagine that in just 4 years she would be positioned to execute the most audacious plan of her career, the complete acquisition of the empire that had once considered her disposable. While Rebecca archived the article about Reynolds Properties' financial troubles, a notification chimed on her calendar: Ethan's Mathematics Journal publication day. She smiled, switching tabs to the online edition of Young Mathematical Minds, where her 14-year-old son's paper on algorithmic optimization was the featured article. His approach to efficiency in predictive systems had implications far beyond mathematics, implications that Anderson Tech was already implementing in their newest security protocol, the protocol that would change everything. Rebecca leaned back in her ergonomic chair, gazing at the Manhattan skyline from her corner office. The expansive view still thrilled her, even after years of working from this vantage point. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Nailed the Tchaikovsky. Professor says I'm definitely ready for the Philharmonic audition next week." Pride swelled in Rebecca's chest. At 14, her daughter would be auditioning as a guest soloist for the New York Philharmonic, an opportunity usually reserved for musicians twice her age. The twins' exceptional talents had blossomed beyond even Rebecca's ambitious hopes, each carving distinct paths of excellence while maintaining the extraordinary bond they shared as siblings. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Eliza Chen, Anderson Tech's lead algorithm developer, entered with tablet in hand, her expression revealing barely contained excitement. "We've done it," Eliza announced without preamble. Final tests confirm the fraud detection algorithm achieves 98.7% accuracy, nearly 40% higher than industry standard. Rebecca stood, taking the tablet to review the data herself. Any false positives? Under 2% in stress testing, even when we threw deliberate anomalies at it. The algorithm represented 18 months of intensive development, combining Rebecca's security expertise, Ethan's mathematical insights, and the collective brilliance of Anderson Tech's research division. Unlike conventional fraud detection systems that reacted to suspicious activities after they occurred, their algorithm predicted fraudulent patterns before transactions completed. "Patent applications?" Rebecca asked, already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Filed last week. Our lawyers expect approval within 90 days given the uniqueness of our approach. Prepare for implementation with our current financial clients. I want beta testing to begin immediately." After Eliza departed, Rebecca opened a secure folder on her computer labeled Avalanche, the codename for the company's most ambitious strategic initiative. Inside were detailed analyses of potential acquisition targets, market penetration projections, and funding scenarios. Recent additions to the folder included in-depth research on Reynolds Properties' financial vulnerabilities, management weaknesses, and shareholder dissatisfaction. The company that had once been Marshall's pride was now struggling under the weight of poor leadership and outdated business models. Their stock had declined 23% over 18 months, and industry rumors suggested that key executives were quietly updating their resumes. Rebecca's intercom buzzed. "The venture capital team from Horizon Partners has arrived," her assistant announced. "Send them to the main conference room. I'll be there momentarily." Horizon Partners represented the 5th venture capital firm to approach Anderson Tech with acquisition offers in recent months. The previous 4 had been dismissed after presenting terms that would have diluted Rebecca's controlling interest. She had no intention of surrendering the company she had built from nothing, but each meeting provided valuable insights into how external investors valued Anderson Tech's innovations. In the sleek conference room, Rebecca greeted the 3 Horizon partners with practiced cordiality. Their presentation was polished, their offer substantial. $8 billion for Anderson Tech Solutions. "Your fraud detection algorithm alone justifies our valuation," explained the lead partner, a Harvard MBA with a reputation for aggressive acquisitions. "Combined with your established client base and implementation infrastructure, Anderson Tech represents a unique opportunity in the financial security sector." Rebecca listened attentively, asking precise questions about valuation methodologies and integration plans. Only when they outlined their management transition strategy did she interrupt. "I appreciate Horizon's interest and your generous offer," she said, her tone pleasant but firm. "However, I should clarify that any acquisition scenario must maintain current leadership and strategic direction. Anderson Tech isn't seeking an exit or management change." The partners exchanged glances, their rehearsed pitch suddenly derailed. $8 billion is a substantial premium over market value, the lead partner countered. "Our investors would expect significant control for that investment." Rebecca smiled. "Then perhaps our companies aren't aligned for partnership at this time. Anderson Tech's value proposition extends beyond current metrics to include our innovation pipeline and organizational culture. Those elements require continuity of leadership." By meeting's end, Rebecca had neither accepted nor entirely rejected their approach, instead establishing parameters for any future discussions: majority ownership retention, leadership continuity, and technological autonomy. The message was clear: Anderson Tech might be available for strategic partnership, but not for absorption. After the venture capitalists departed, Rebecca checked her watch. If she left now, she'd arrive just in time for Emma's violin rehearsal at Juilliard. She had never missed a significant performance or academic milestone for either twin, regardless of business demands. This dedication to their development had required countless pre-dawn work sessions and late nights, but the results spoke for themselves in the twins' confidence and achievements. The sleek Tesla that Rebecca drove, a carefully considered investment rather than an indulgence, slipped through Manhattan traffic with quiet efficiency. As she drove, she dictated notes for tomorrow's executive meeting, her mind constantly balancing immediate operations with long-term strategy. At Juilliard, Rebecca slipped into the rehearsal hall, taking a seat at the back to observe without disrupting. Emma stood center stage, violin positioned with professional precision, her posture reflecting years of disciplined practice. When she began playing, the room fell completely silent. Even the orchestra conductor lowered his baton, momentarily transfixed by the pure, powerful notes Emma coaxed from her instrument. Rebecca recognized the piece, Bach's Chaconne, notoriously difficult even for seasoned professionals. Emma played it with technical perfection, but more importantly, with emotional depth that belied her 14 years. When the final note resonated through the hall, there was a moment of collective held breath before applause erupted. Later that evening, the twins celebrated their respective achievements with a family dinner at their favorite restaurant, a mid-priced Italian place that had become their tradition for marking special occasions. Rebecca observed her children across the table, marveling at how they'd grown into poised, thoughtful teenagers while somehow maintaining the close bond they'd shared since infancy. "Mom, when's your patent announcement?" Ethan asked, methodically twirling pasta around his fork. "How did you know about that?" Rebecca asked, genuinely surprised. Emma rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "Please, you've been practically vibrating with excitement all week. Plus, Ethan helped with the core mathematics. Of course we know." Rebecca laughed. "The official announcement is next month after the regulatory filings are complete. But yes, the algorithm tests exceeded all expectations." "Will it make the company more valuable?" Ethan inquired, his analytical mind always considering practical implications. "Significantly," Rebecca confirmed. "In fact, we received another acquisition offer today." "You're not selling, are you?" Emma asked sharply, suddenly concerned. "Never without consulting my two most important advisors," Rebecca assured them, reaching across to squeeze their hands. "Anderson Tech belongs to all of us. It's our legacy." The twins exchanged a satisfied glance, their faith in their mother's judgment absolute and well-earned. 3 weeks after the algorithm's patent approval, Anderson Tech announced its revolutionary fraud detection system at a major financial technology conference. The presentation, led by Rebecca with technical support from her research team, generated immediate industry buzz. By day's end, Anderson Tech's stock had climbed 18%, and 23 financial institutions had requested implementation consultations. In the following months, the algorithm's effectiveness exceeded even internal projections. Financial institutions reported fraud prevention rates that translated to millions in saved losses. Industry publications featured glowing analyses of Anderson Tech's innovation, and Rebecca found herself in increasing demand as a speaker at financial and technology conferences. With 32% of the market for financial security systems now under Anderson Tech's control, the company's valuation reached $4.7 billion. Rebecca maintained 51% ownership, ensuring her strategic control remained absolute while creating substantial wealth for key employees through equity distribution. This success enabled Rebecca's most audacious move yet. Through a series of carefully structured transactions using shell companies and investment proxies, Anderson Tech began quietly acquiring shares in Reynolds Properties. The purchases remained below reporting thresholds, preventing Marshall or the Reynolds board from recognizing the systematic accumulation until Rebecca had secured a significant minority position. "We've reached 15% ownership," Jenny reported during a highly confidential strategy meeting. Only Rebecca's most trusted executives knew about Operation Avalanche. Another 5% would trigger mandatory disclosure. "Hold at current levels," Rebecca decided. "Monitor their quarterly reporting for the trigger point." The trigger arrived sooner than expected. Reynolds Properties announced disappointing quarterly results, missing earnings projections by 22%. Their stock dropped precipitously, creating the perfect opportunity for accelerated acquisition. "Execute Phase 2, Rebecca instructed her team. "I want 30% ownership by week's end." As Anderson Tech's influence over Reynolds Properties grew, Rebecca implemented the next stage of her strategy. Through back channels, she expressed concerns about current management to other major shareholders, subtly building a coalition of dissatisfied investors. Meanwhile, her financial team developed a comprehensive restructuring plan that promised to restore Reynolds' market position through technological modernization and management overhaul. The twins remained unaware of these specific maneuvers, though they understood that their mother was planning something significant. Rebecca had always been transparent with them about business principles while protecting them from details that might burden them unnecessarily. On the evening of their 14th birthday, Rebecca hosted an elegant but intimate celebration at their brownstone. The guest list included only their closest friends and Rebecca's most trusted colleagues. The twins had requested a small gathering rather than an extravagant party, their mature sensibilities preferring meaningful connection over spectacle. "A toast," Rebecca announced, raising her glass as they gathered around the dining table, "to Emma and Ethan, who fill my life with pride and purpose every day. You've grown into extraordinary people with kind hearts and brilliant minds. I couldn't ask for greater joy than being your mother." After cake and presents, when the guests had departed and the twins were engrossed in their new gifts, Rebecca received an email that made her heart race, an invitation to be the keynote speaker at the upcoming Tech Summit at the Plaza Hotel, the most prestigious event in the corporate technology calendar. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The summit would provide the ideal platform for announcing Anderson Tech's newest innovation and, more importantly, the acquisition of Reynolds Properties. The symmetry felt almost poetic. The Plaza Hotel, Manhattan's iconic symbol of success and status, would witness the culmination of Rebecca's journey from abandoned expectant mother to industry titan. As Rebecca accepted the invitation, another notification appeared, the announcement of award recipients for the same event. There, listed as Real Estate Entrepreneur of the Year, was Marshall Reynolds. She stared at the name, feeling neither anger nor anxiety, but rather a calm certainty that justice had designed this moment. After 14 years of building her empire with relentless determination, after raising extraordinary children who embodied everything Marshall had dismissed as a burden, after transforming herself from victim to victor, the universe had arranged a perfect reckoning. Emma's voice called from the living room, pulling Rebecca back to the present. "Mom, come see what Ethan's new programming kit can do." Rebecca closed her laptop and joined her children, her steps light with anticipation of what lay ahead. The past had shaped but never defined her. The future, carefully designed, meticulously executed, belonged entirely to the Andersons. While Rebecca finalized the details of the presentation that would forever change the balance of power in Manhattan, she didn't know that in less than 24 hours she would be face to face with the man who had abandoned her, and that his expression of horrified recognition would be just the first act of her meticulously planned victory. The morning of the Tech Summit dawned with perfect clarity, as if Manhattan itself had polished its edges for the occasion. Rebecca stood at the window of her penthouse, watching the city awaken beneath her. Today, the carefully constructed strategy she had nurtured for 14 years would culminate in its final, perfect act. "Mom, are you sure this tie works with this suit?" Ethan appeared in the doorway, his lanky frame already approaching 6 feet, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit that emphasized his resemblance to the man he had never met. Rebecca turned, her custom Armani suit catching the morning light. "It's perfect, very mathematical. subtle patterns within patterns. She adjusted the silk tie with practiced hands, noting how her son's serious eyes, so like Marshall's, assessed every detail with precision. "Emma's been in the bathroom for 45 minutes, Ethan complained with brotherly exasperation. "We'll be late." "Beauty is mathematics expressed through time," Emma called from the hallway, emerging in an elegant Chanel ensemble that transformed her from teenager to poised young woman. Her violin case hung from one shoulder. She would head directly to Juilliard for rehearsal after the morning session of the summit. Rebecca surveyed her children with quiet pride. "You both look extraordinary. Remember, you don't need to stay for the entire event, just my keynote and the announcement." "We wouldn't miss it," Emma said, her chin lifting with the same determination Rebecca had relied upon during their hardest days. Anderson Tech's biggest moment deserves its full team. The sleek company limousine arrived precisely on schedule. As they descended in the private elevator, Rebecca mentally rehearsed her presentation once more. The latest security innovation would impress the technology world, but the announcement of the Reynolds Properties acquisition would shock the business community to its core. "Your speech is perfect, Mom. Stop reviewing," Emma said as the limousine glided through morning traffic toward the Plaza Hotel. She reached forward to adjust a delicate crystal brooch that secured her elegant chignon, a gift from Rebecca on her last birthday. "It's a big day for us," Rebecca responded, watching her children with pride as the iconic plaza came into view. "Anderson Tech will announce our largest acquisition to date." "Which company are you buying this time?" Ethan asked, fingers dancing across his tablet screen, likely solving some complex equation that occupied his perpetually active mind. Rebecca smiled enigmatically. "One that represents more than just business for me. But let's keep that our secret until the official announcement." The Plaza Hotel's legendary opulence greeted them as they entered. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and the quiet hum of America's business elite gathering for the most prestigious event in the technology calendar. Rebecca moved through the space with practiced ease, accepting greetings from CEOs and industry leaders who now treated her as an equal. With each handshake and exchange, she scanned the growing crowd, knowing that somewhere among them was Marshall Reynolds. "Ms. Anderson, such an honor to have you as our keynote this year." The event coordinator approached, clipboard in hand. "We've arranged everything exactly as requested. Your presentation is loaded into our system, and the special announcement has been added to the program immediately following your speech." "Perfect. Thank you." Rebecca nodded, her composure unshakable despite the anticipation building within her. "My children will be seated at the front table." As they moved toward the grand ballroom, Rebecca felt a momentary tightening in her chest when she spotted Marshall's name on the event board. Marshall Reynolds, Reynolds Properties, Real Estate Entrepreneur of the Year. The award ceremony would follow her keynote address, a sequence she had not orchestrated but that fate had arranged with exquisite timing. The ballroom filled quickly with attendees eager to hear from the woman who had revolutionized financial security. Rebecca and the twins were escorted to the main table, positioned prominently near the stage. From this vantage point, she could observe the entire room, watching as the final attendees took their seats. And then she saw him. Marshall Reynolds entered with the practiced confidence of Manhattan royalty, his custom suit and perfect grooming broadcasting success and privilege. He looked older, fine lines around his eyes, a touch of gray at his temples, but essentially unchanged from the man who had coldly discarded her 14 years ago. He took his seat at a table near the front, surrounded by associates, completely unaware of the seismic shift about to rock his world. Rebecca felt no flutter of emotion, no lingering pain or attraction. The man who had once held such power over her life now appeared remarkably ordinary, just another businessman in an expensive suit, unremarkable except for the coincidence of shared history and biological connection to her children. "Is that him?" Emma whispered, her perceptive gaze following her mother's line of sight. Rebecca nodded almost imperceptibly. "Focus on today's achievement, not past disappointments." The summit director approached the podium, welcoming attendees and introducing the day's program. We are especially honored to begin with our keynote address from Rebecca Anderson, founder and CEO of Anderson Tech Solutions, whose innovations in cybersecurity have transformed the financial industry. Please welcome Rebecca Anderson. The applause was enthusiastic as Rebecca ascended the steps to the stage with unhurried confidence. The enormous crystal chandeliers sparkled above her as she took her position at the podium, surveying the assembled elite of American business. Her tailored Armani suit, subtle makeup, and poised demeanor projected an image of absolute authority, a woman who belonged precisely where she stood. "Innovation isn't just about technology," she began, her voice clear and steady, filling the grand ballroom. "It's about resilience, about transforming obstacles into opportunities." From his seat in the fourth row, Marshall Reynolds shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. Something in Rebecca's voice triggered a distant memory, though he couldn't immediately place it. He leaned forward, studying the woman on stage with growing attention. When her full introduction appeared on the massive screen behind her, Rebecca Anderson, CEO of Anderson Tech Solutions, accompanied by an impressive biography detailing her rise from obscurity to technological prominence, Marshall felt the blood drain from his face. It couldn't be the same Rebecca, the insignificant assistant he had discarded. This woman commanded a billion-dollar company, was internationally respected, and was now being announced as the visionary who revolutionized cybersecurity in the financial sector. For the next 45 minutes, Marshall watched in stunned disbelief as Rebecca presented technological innovations that made his own business endeavors seem primitive by comparison. She explained complex security protocols with effortless authority, commanded the rapt attention of industry giants, and unveiled a new predictive system that was immediately hailed as revolutionary by the murmuring crowd. The Reynolds properties, though still profitable, had stagnated in recent years, facing lawsuits over questionable labor practices and losing market share to more innovative competitors. Marshall had maintained his family's legacy through connections rather than vision, and the contrast between his management and Rebecca's leadership became painfully apparent with each slide of her presentation. "This new security framework represents not just protection but prediction," Rebecca explained, gesturing to the complex visualization behind her. "By anticipating vulnerabilities rather than merely responding to them, we create truly secure environments for financial institutions of any size." The audience was enthralled, many taking notes or photographing her slides. Marshall remained frozen, unable to reconcile this commanding presence with the young woman he had once dismissed as insignificant. His memory flashed to that cold December night, the small apartment in Queens, her tearful face as he methodically removed all traces of himself from her life. As Rebecca's presentation neared its conclusion, she made a gesture toward the main table. "None of this would be possible without my greatest treasures and inspirations, my children, Ethan and Emma Anderson." The twins rose with practiced poise, acknowledging the applause with modest nods. Marshall's world tilted on its axis as he stared at the young man and woman standing proudly beside their mother's table. The boy had his jawline, his eyes. The girl, though more like Rebecca, had the same bearing his own mother had possessed. There was no mistaking the truth. These were his children, the children he had denied and abandoned. His heart hammered against his ribs as a cold sweat broke across his forehead. 14 years. Twins. The pregnancy she had revealed on that winter night had produced not one child, but two. Two remarkable young people who carried his blood but bore another's name. And now, Rebecca continued with a contained smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "I have the pleasure of announcing the largest acquisition in Anderson Tech Solutions history. After months of discreet negotiations with the board of directors and shareholders, we have acquired majority control of Reynolds Properties." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Marshall gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening, certain he had misheard. This acquisition represents not only a strategic expansion for our portfolio, but also the union of cutting-edge technology with a real estate sector desperately in need of innovation, Rebecca explained, her eyes finally finding Marshall's in the crowd. Reynolds Properties has suffered from stagnant leadership and outdated practices. Anderson Tech will transform it into a company for the 21st century. The screen behind her displayed the merged company logo, Anderson Real Estate Technologies. Marshall felt physically ill as the implications crashed over him. His family's company, the empire his grandfather had built, the legacy he had been so desperate to preserve that he had discarded Rebecca and his unborn children, was now controlled by the woman he had abandoned. As Rebecca concluded to enthusiastic applause, Marshall remained rooted to his chair, unable to process the cataclysmic shift in his reality. The twins returned to their seats, neither looking in his direction, clearly uninterested in the man who had rejected them before birth. The cocktail reception that followed buzzed with excitement over the announcement. Executives and investors crowded around Rebecca, offering congratulations and seeking details about the acquisition and merger plans. Marshall moved mechanically through the crowd, accepting perfunctory congratulations for his entrepreneur award that now seemed hollow and meaningless. For nearly an hour, he circled the periphery of Rebecca's orbit, watching as she navigated the crowd with effortless authority, the twins occasionally at her side displaying the same confident poise. When Emma smiled at something a Google executive said, Marshall glimpsed Rebecca's expression from 14 years ago, before he had extinguished her light with his cruelty. Finally, as the crowd momentarily thinned around her, Marshall seized his opportunity. Approaching with forced composure, he extended his hand. "Rebecca," he said, struggling to maintain his facade. "What an extraordinary surprise." "Marshall," she replied coolly, accepting his handshake with professional detachment. "Not so surprising for me. I've been tracking Reynolds Properties' decline for years, waiting for the right moment to make my offer." "Those young people," he hesitated, glancing toward the twins who were conversing with executives across the room, "are they your biological children?" "Yes," Rebecca answered with clinical indifference, "though legally they are solely mine. The confidentiality agreement your lawyers forced me to sign had several flaws that my own attorneys identified years ago." At that moment, Emma approached, her curious gaze assessing Marshall with intelligent precision. "Mom, Microsoft's CFO wants to discuss that partnership we mentioned," she said before turning to Marshall with professional courtesy. "Sorry to interrupt." "Emma, this is Marshall Reynolds," Rebecca introduced with a neutral voice. "The man whose company we just acquired." Emma extended her hand in a firm handshake. "Ah, the entrepreneur of the year. Congratulations on the award, though Reynolds Properties' last quarterly numbers tell a different story. Your business model desperately needed restructuring." Marshall paled at the teenager's merciless analysis. "You look like your mother," he managed to say. "Thank you," Emma replied with a polite smile. "That's the highest compliment I could receive. My mother taught us that value isn't measured by surnames or bank accounts, but by the character one demonstrates in difficult moments." When Emma departed, Marshall attempted to recover some dignity. "Rebecca, we need to talk privately, about the twins, about the past." "There is no we, Marshall," Rebecca responded. "There is the CEO of Anderson Tech and the former majority owner of Reynolds Properties. Any communication we need to have will be through our respective legal departments." At that moment, the announcer called everyone back for the second part of the event. On stage, Rebecca made the official announcement, "The acquisition of Reynolds Properties by Anderson Tech Solutions represents the largest merger in the sector this year, with our company assuming full control of operations. To Mr. Reynolds, who will receive the Entrepreneur of the Year award next, we offer a consulting position on the board, without decision-making power, naturally." As the audience applauded, the twins positioned themselves beside their mother for official photographs. Camera flashes from the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg captured the exact moment when the Anderson empire completely eclipsed the Reynolds legacy. The camera flashes illuminated the grand ballroom as the Anderson family posed for what would become tomorrow's business headlines. The twins flanked Rebecca, their poised confidence a testament to her unwavering dedication. As the photographers dispersed, Rebecca noted Marshall's ashen face as he mechanically accepted congratulations for his now hollow award. The satisfaction she felt wasn't vindictive pleasure but the clean, clear feeling of justice finally served. "Ms. Anderson, the Bloomberg reporter would like 5 minutes," her assistant whispered. "Tell him I'll meet him by the east entrance in 10, Rebecca replied, her gaze still tracking Marshall as he retreated to the bar. The elegant cocktail reception continued around them, Manhattan's business elite now buzzing with excited speculation about the acquisition. Rebecca navigated the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and deflecting questions about her future plans for Reynolds Properties with diplomatic vagueness. "Remarkable execution," commented the CEO of Goldman Sachs, champagne flute raised in salute. "The market will react favorably tomorrow." "The synergies were too compelling to ignore," Rebecca responded with professional modesty. Across the room, Marshall downed his second scotch, his Entrepreneur of the Year award sitting neglected on the table beside him. The irony of receiving recognition for business acumen on the same day he lost control of his family's company wasn't lost on anyone present. Several of his colleagues had already discreetly departed, sensing the shifting power dynamics and recalculating their allegiances. "Mom, I need to leave for rehearsal soon," Emma said, approaching with Ethan beside her. "Should we take the car and send it back for you?" "That works perfectly. I'll stay another hour for networking," Rebecca replied, straightening Emma's already immaculate collar in a maternal gesture. "You were both exceptional today." "Your announcement had perfect dramatic structure," Emma observed with an appreciative smile. "The audience's reaction when you revealed the Reynolds acquisition was everything we could have hoped for." Ethan nodded in agreement. Statistically speaking, the likelihood of both events occurring at the same venue was minimal. Fortuitous timing. Rebecca watched her children depart, their heads held high as they navigated the crowd with natural grace. From across the room, she caught Marshall staring at them, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. "He's been watching them since the announcement," Jenny commented, appearing at Rebecca's side with 2 mineral waters. Trying to process 14 years of reality crashing down at once. 14 years, 3 months, and 16 days, Rebecca corrected, accepting the water. "Not that I'm counting." As the reception continued, Marshall seemed to fortify himself with liquid courage. Rebecca observed his progression from shocked immobility to agitated determination. She knew the moment he decided to approach her again. His shoulders squared, jaw set, eyes focused with the entitlement of a man accustomed to controlling outcomes. "Ms. Anderson, Senator Williams would like to discuss your appointment to the Commerce Advisory Board," her assistant interjected, presenting the perfect opportunity to avoid Marshall's imminent approach. "Please tell the senator I'll join him momentarily," Rebecca replied, deliberately turning toward the balcony doors. "I need some fresh air first." The plaza's terrace offered a momentary respite from the crowded ballroom. The autumn air carried the crispness of changing seasons, and the city lights sparkled against the darkening sky. Rebecca took a deliberate breath, preparing herself for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. She didn't wait long. The glass door opened behind her, and Marshall's reflection appeared in the window. "Running away, Rebecca?" His tone attempted confidence but revealed underlying strain. "That doesn't seem like the CEO who just announced a hostile takeover." Rebecca turned, her composure absolute. "Strategic retreat for perspective, Marshall. Something your quarterly reports suggest you might have benefited from practicing." He flinched slightly at the pointed reference to his company's declining performance. "This acquisition, it's personal. You engineered this entire situation for revenge." "Revenge?" Rebecca's laugh was genuine. "That would require emotional investment I haven't had in you for years. This was business. Reynolds Properties has undervalued assets, outdated systems, and leadership problems. Classic acquisition target. Marshall stepped closer, lowering his voice. Those are my children in there, my flesh and blood. Biology doesn't equal parenthood, Rebecca replied, her voice cooling several degrees. You made that distinction perfectly clear 14 years ago. A child would be an unbearable burden, I believe were your exact words. Interesting how unbearable burdens become appealing once they're successful, isn't it? The direct quote from their final conversation visibly shook him. Marshall glanced back toward the ballroom where attendees continued networking, unaware of the personal drama unfolding on the terrace. I made a mistake, he admitted, his voice rough with unaccustomed humility. I was young, focused on my career. The timing was— Don't, Rebecca interrupted, raising her hand. Don't rewrite history. You weren't some confused boy. You were 32 years old, making a calculated decision to discard people you considered inconvenient. You made your choice with clear eyes. Marshall's jaw tightened. People change. I've changed. Have you? Or has the situation changed? Rebecca's gaze was unflinching. Now my children are accomplished, connected, and associated with success. Suddenly they're worth claiming. How convenient for you. Before Marshall could respond, the terrace door opened again. Emma stood framed in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral as she assessed the tableau before her. Sorry to interrupt, she said, stepping forward with the same measured confidence Rebecca had cultivated in boardrooms. The car's waiting, but I forgot my portfolio. Her gaze settled on Marshall with clinical interest. You're still here. Emma, Marshall began, her name awkward on his tongue. I was just telling your mother that I'd like the opportunity to get to know you and your brother. Emma's eyebrow arched slightly, a gesture so reminiscent of Rebecca that Marshall blinked in surprise. Were you? How fascinating. Did you preface that request by acknowledging that you legally surrendered all parental rights before our birth? Marshall paled. Your mother told you about that? My mother has never lied to us, Emma replied with precision. She explained our biological origins when we were old enough to understand, including your explicit rejection of parenthood. Comprehensive documentation was provided when we requested it at age 12. Rebecca watched this exchange with quiet pride. Emma, despite her youth, was navigating this emotionally charged encounter with remarkable composure. Documents don't tell the whole story, Marshall protested. There were complexities, professional considerations. Yes, your career, Emma interrupted with cool efficiency. The vice presidency that was finally giving you real responsibilities. More important than the lives you created. She checked her watch. I need to go. Professor Abramson doesn't tolerate tardiness, even from principal soloists. As Emma turned to leave, Marshall made a desperate attempt to salvage the moment. Wait, I'd like to hear you play sometime. Perhaps attend a performance? Emma paused, turning back with the practiced smile she used for professional obligations. My performances are typically sold out weeks in advance. You could contact the Juilliard box office for the public schedule. She looked to Rebecca. Mom, will you be home for dinner? By 7, Rebecca confirmed. Good luck with rehearsal. After Emma's departure, an uncomfortable silence settled between the former lovers. Marshall stared at the door through which his daughter had disappeared, the full weight of his choices visibly settling on his shoulders. She's extraordinary, he finally said. They both are, Rebecca agreed. No thanks to you. Marshall turned back to her, desperation edging into his voice. There must be some way forward here, some path to at least a relationship with them. They're teenagers. They'll be curious about their father. Their curiosity was satisfied through facts, Marshall. The agreement you signed, the account of your reaction to the pregnancy, the chronology of events. They're not lacking information about you. They simply lack interest in pursuing a relationship. Because you've poisoned them against me, he accused, anger flaring. Rebecca's laugh was sharp. "I didn't need to. Your own actions were toxic enough. All I did was tell the truth." Inside the ballroom, the announcement chimed for the evening's final presentation. Guests began returning to their seats, the networking portion of the event concluding. "We should return," Rebecca said, moving toward the door. "Your Entrepreneur Award presentation is about to begin." Marshall caught her arm, his grip tight enough to reveal his desperation. "Rebecca, please. I have money, connections. I could offer them opportunities." "Remove your hand," Rebecca stated, her voice deadly quiet. "Now." He released her immediately, recognizing the steel beneath her controlled exterior. "Opportunities?" Rebecca continued, straightening her sleeve. "Ethan has already published in mathematical journals and created algorithms that power systems used by major financial institutions. Emma performs with orchestras across the country and has been accepted to programs most musicians spend lifetimes pursuing. What exactly do you think you could offer that they haven't already earned through their own brilliance?" Before Marshall could respond, the terrace door opened again. Rebecca's assistant appeared, expression apologetic. "Ms. Anderson, they're requesting your presence for the final announcements." "Thank you. I'll be right there." Rebecca turned back to Marshall, her expression now purely professional. "Congratulations on your award, Mr. Reynolds. I suggest you compose yourself before accepting it. The financial press is watching." The remainder of the evening unfolded with excruciating precision. Marshall accepted his Entrepreneur of the Year award with a wooden smile, his prepared speech delivered mechanically while the audience politely applauded. Rebecca watched from her table, her expression revealing nothing of their private confrontation. When the formal program concluded, Rebecca graciously accepted final congratulations from industry leaders while Marshall huddled with his remaining allies, no doubt discussing damage control strategies. The contrast between them couldn't have been more stark, Rebecca radiating confidence and forward momentum, Marshall desperately trying to preserve what remained of his position. As she prepared to depart, Rebecca noticed Marshall speaking intensely with his assistant, occasionally glancing in her direction. Years of business negotiations had taught her to recognize when an opponent was planning another approach. She deliberately took a circuitous route to the exit, stopping to speak with key contacts and potential partners, making it impossible for him to engineer another private conversation. In the elegant lobby, Rebecca paused to confirm details for tomorrow's implementation meeting with her executive team. From the corner of her eye, she saw Marshall emerging from the ballroom, scanning the crowd with obvious intent. "Rebecca!" he called, moving toward her with determination. "We're not finished." She turned, maintaining professional composure despite the public setting. "Actually, we are. Any further communication should be directed through proper channels. Your consulting position with the new organization will be outlined in documentation you'll receive tomorrow." "This isn't about business," he insisted, lowering his voice but unable to completely mask his agitation. "Those are my children. I have rights." "Rights?" Rebecca's eyebrow arched. "How interesting that you mention rights, Marshall. Where were these rights when you told me I and our children weren't enough for your world? Where were they when your exact words were, 'Go back to your insignificant Kansas'?" She opened a file on her tablet and turned it toward him. "This is the agreement your lawyers made me sign. You explicitly waived any parental rights in exchange for my silence. Legally, you are nothing to them." While the photographers captured the image of the new Anderson dynasty with Manhattan at their feet, Marshall Reynolds left the building, a diminished figure on the sidewalk, while Rebecca remained at the top, literally and figuratively. Marshall Reynolds woke to the insistent buzz of his phone, the morning light streaming through his bedroom windows doing nothing to dispel the fog of his restless night. Reaching for the device, he squinted at the screen to find 15 missed calls, 23 text messages, and a cascade of news alerts. The first headline made his stomach plummet. "Anderson Tech executes brilliant acquisition of Reynolds properties." Below it, another. "The decline of the Reynolds dynasty. How a tech visionary outmaneuvered Manhattan's old guard. Marshall sat up abruptly, fully awake now. The events of yesterday's tech summit crashed back into his consciousness. Rebecca's composed authority on stage, the twins' poised confidence, the public announcement of his company's acquisition, and the humiliating realization that his biological children had been hidden in plain sight for years. His phone rang again. This time he answered. "Marshall, what the hell is happening?" The panicked voice of his fiancée, Vanessa, daughter of Senator Williams, filled his ear. "Daddy just called me. He said Anderson Tech has taken control of Reynolds. Tell me this isn't true." "Vanessa, I can explain." "Explain what? That you lost your family's company? That you didn't see this coming? The gala for the Children's Hospital is next week. How am I supposed to face everyone?" Marshall pinched the bridge of his nose. "This is a bit more complex than your social calendar." "Don't you dare condescend to me," Vanessa snapped. "I need to know exactly what this means for us, for our future." The implied question hung in the air. Was he still worth marrying now that his corporate position had been compromised? The calculated nature of her concern would have bothered him once. Now it merely seemed fitting. "I'll call you later," he said, ending the call as another one immediately began ringing through. By the time Marshall arrived at the Reynolds Properties headquarters, now sporting a temporary Anderson Tech banner in the lobby, his phone had become a relentless chorus of crisis. Board members demanding explanations, business partners reconsidering deals, attorneys suggesting emergency strategies. The security guard at the reception desk, a man who had nodded respectfully to Marshall every morning for 5 years, now asked for identification. "Mr. Reynolds, I'll need to see your ID badge. New security protocols as of this morning." Marshall produced his credentials, feeling like a visitor in his own building. "What's going on up there?" he asked, gesturing toward the executive floor. The guard's expression remained professional but distant. A transition team arrived at 7. They've been in the conference room since. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Marshall immediately sensed the shift in atmosphere. IT specialists were stationed at various workstations, systematically accessing systems. The hushed, tense conversations among his staff ceased as he walked by, replaced by watchful silence. His office door stood open. Inside, on his desk, sat a single envelope bearing the Anderson Tech logo. Inside was a crisp, one-page letter. "As discussed in the board meeting, which you did not attend, your consulting position requires attendance at the restructuring event today at 2 o'clock. Attendance is mandatory." Marshall checked his watch. 11:30. The board meeting must have been called first thing this morning, intentionally when he wouldn't be present. The calculated precision of Rebecca's takeover became increasingly clear. The conference room was already filled when Marshall arrived at 2 o'clock. Rebecca sat at the head of the table, his position until yesterday, flanked by her executive team. More shocking than her presence were the 2 teenagers seated at the table reviewing documents with professional focus. Ethan and Emma looked up briefly as he entered, their expressions revealing nothing beyond mild curiosity. "Mr. Reynolds?" Rebecca acknowledged with professional detachment. "Please take a seat. We were just discussing the technology integration timeline." Marshall sat in the only available chair, at the far end of the table, opposite Rebecca. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. "Before we proceed," he began, attempting to reclaim some authority, "I'd like to understand the legal basis for this acquisition. The controlling shares were protected by family trust provisions." "Those provisions expired 3 years ago," Rebecca replied without consulting any documents. "The board minutes from that time indicate you were advised to renew them but never completed the paperwork. Section 4, paragraph 12 of your company bylaws then allowed for majority shareholder action without renewal." The precision of her knowledge stunned him into silence. She had studied every vulnerability, every overlooked detail. "Mr. Reynolds," Ethan spoke up, his voice startlingly mature for a 14-year-old, "I'm leading the technology transition team. Your IT infrastructure is, frankly, a decade behind. We'll need complete access to your servers to begin migration." "You can't be serious," Marshall protested, looking from Rebecca to the boy. "He's 14 years old." 15 next week, Rebecca corrected smoothly. "And Ethan has been our principal security consultant since he was 13. His protection algorithm is what will make your systems finally secure." Emma, reviewing financial documents with a highlighter, added without looking up, "Your operational reserves are dangerously low, and the leverage on your southern developments is well above acceptable levels. That's why we were able to acquire the company for 17% below market value." The meeting continued for 2 excruciating hours. Every aspect of the empire Marshall had inherited and mismanaged was methodically dissected by Rebecca and a team where his own children played crucial roles. They discussed restructuring plans, technology upgrades, and personnel changes with clinical efficiency, occasionally asking for his input only to politely dismiss his suggestions as outdated or impractical. When the meeting finally concluded, Rebecca asked him to stay behind. As the room emptied, Marshall found himself alone with the woman he had discarded 14 years ago, now holding complete power over his professional future. "Rebecca," he began, abandoning pretense, "I know I made a terrible mistake 14 years ago, but they're my children too. I have a right to know them." Rebecca regarded him with disturbing serenity. "Right? How interesting that you mention rights, Marshall. Where were those rights when you told me that I and our children weren't enough for your world? Where were they when your exact words were, 'Go back to your insignificant Kansas'?" She opened a file on her tablet and turned it toward him. "This is the agreement your lawyers made me sign. You explicitly waived any parental rights in exchange for my silence. Legally, you are nothing to them." "People change," he argued desperately. "I can make amends, offer them opportunities, connections." Rebecca laughed, a genuinely amused sound that disconcerted him even more. "Opportunities? Connections? Ethan has just been accepted to special simultaneous programs at MIT and Stanford. Emma performs with the New York Philharmonic as a guest soloist. What exactly do you think you can offer that they haven't already achieved through their own merit?" The following week, the new board of Reynolds Properties, now renamed Anderson Real Estate Technologies, announced a complete restructuring. Marshall's office was converted into a daycare center for employees' children, one of many family-friendly policies implemented by the new administration. Desperately trying to maintain some relevance, Marshall requested a meeting with the twins. To his surprise, they accepted, agreeing to meet him at the renowned Per Se restaurant, where he reserved a private dining room. When they arrived, Marshall was struck again by their poise. They carried themselves with the confident ease of young people who had never questioned their place in the world or their worth. "I want you to know that despite the circumstances, I'm very proud of who you've become," he began, trying to establish a connection. Ethan and Emma exchanged identical evaluative glances, the same assessing look Rebecca had in negotiations. "Mr. Reynolds," Ethan responded calmly, "we appreciate the gesture, but we want to be very clear. We're not looking for a father." "Our mother was both father and mother to us," Emma continued. "She taught us everything we needed to know about integrity, hard work, and loyalty, including," Ethan added, checking his watch, "the value of punctuality. We have a video conference with Tokyo investors in 20 minutes. It was informative meeting you." The twins rose in perfect synchrony, leaving Marshall alone with a $1,200 bill and the devastating understanding of what he had lost. In her Upper East Side penthouse, ironically, in a building that had once belonged to Reynolds Properties, Rebecca finalized details for Anderson Tech's international expansion. Photos of Emma and Ethan adorned her office, precious moments from each birthday, achievement, and milestone. Her phone rang, her personal assistant calling. "Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Reynolds is in the reception area. He insists on seeing you, says it's personal." Rebecca sighed. "Tell him I'm busy building the future he guaranteed I would never have." Hanging up, Rebecca walked to the panoramic window that offered a spectacular view of Manhattan. Below, she could see Marshall Reynolds leaving the building, a diminutive figure on the sidewalk, while she remained at the top, literally and figuratively. What surprised her was that she felt no vindication. Instead, she experienced something more powerful: indifference. Marshall Reynolds had become irrelevant in her story of triumph, a minor character long surpassed in the script of her extraordinary life. The empire he rejected along with her now valued 3 times more than everything he had once possessed. The children he considered an unbearable burden were prodigies whom the world admired, and the insignificant Kansas woman had become Manhattan's undisputed queen. Justice hadn't required her intervention. Life had delivered it perfectly, served on a gold platter that Rebecca had forged with her own hands. While the doctors at New York Presbyterian revealed she was expecting twins, Rebecca couldn't possibly imagine that 15 years later she would be commanding a billion-dollar technology empire from those same skyscrapers that had once seemed so hostile and unreachable. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.